Technology use with our children can be a really hard thing to navigate, and it gets even harder as our children become teenagers. In this video, we'll talk about rules you should have with your teens that will help keep them safe with technology. But first, hello, my name is Valerie. I blog at babywisemom.com. I've been blogging there since the year 2007. I have 4 children who currently range in age from 11 to 18 years old, and I love helping parents love parenting. I've broken down rules into different categories. So the first one is location limitations. It is okay and appropriate for you to have limitations on where technology can be used. So some things like no bedrooms, no bathrooms, no dinner table. Like dinner table is time for just family. We're not on our phones. We're not watching videos. We're interacting with our family. And of course, not while driving. So if you have a driver, you want to make sure it's very clear you're not on your phone when you're driving. Like I see adults, and I'm sure you do too, I see adults who are texting while they are driving down the highway, or who are watching a video while they are driving down the highway. So there is no reason to just assume that your teenager won't also do the same. If there are adults who do it, there will be teens who do it. And so there just needs to be a very solid, this is a rule, we do not do this. The next category to think about is time limitations. It is absolutely okay for you as the parent to put time limitations on when technology can be consumed by your teenager. This can include when they're able to use technology and under what circumstances they're able to use technology. For example, a really good rule to have is that you cannot get on your technology until your chores are done. We all know how easy it is to get sucked into social media, into videos, into just anything on technology. And so it's wise to have a rule that you need to have your chores done before you do your technology. Along those same lines, it's smart to have not until your homework is done. If there are things your child should be practicing, like an instrument or a sport, if there are things your child should be doing, there's all of that stuff done before you get on the tech, because tech is a time suck, and it's just really wise to get all of those things that you need to have done before you jump into the tech. It's also really wise to have breaks during the day, just times of the day when technology is not allowed. So you might say, when you get home from school, I'm going to turn in your phone and we're not going to do tech until after dinner. And that's just kind of a good general type of a rule, because that gives your teen time to do the chores, to do the homework, to do the practicing. But beyond that, it gives your teen a break from teenage life. We all can remember, those who currently have teenagers or older can remember being able to come home from school and we were just home. We weren't still plugged into drama that was going on or any of that kind of stuff. Like we were able to come home and decompress and be in our safe space at home. And so having time off from technology at home allows your teenager to also have just that time off. They don't have to stay plugged in. They don't have to be texting constantly. They can have breaks where they're able to be in a safe space at their home. It's also really wise to have a technology curfew. So a curfew for when your child's devices need to be turned in for the day. And this is good so that they're not staying up too late. You want your curfew to be before what time you feel like they should be thinking about going to bed. And so, if you're thinking it would be really great if they were in bed by 10 p.m. You don't want the technology curfew to be 10 p.m. because then the technology gets turned in and then they start thinking about getting into their pajamas and brushing their teeth and all that kind of stuff. If you make the technology curfew 9 p.m., then they have some time to think about that stuff, like all the things they need to get ready for bed. And they're also, again, not getting sucked in, losing track of time, and able to go to bed when they feel tired instead of staying up longer than they should. It's also really beneficial to do what we call a technology fast. So at our house, the last week of every month, is a technology fast where we do not have video games, we don't have TV, like it's a fast. Like we take time off of technology and do other things. Technology is so easy to turn to for entertainment when you're bored. And during that week, the kids always spend way more time practicing their piano than they do when they're not having a technology fast. They also like start doing creative things, doing some artistic things or reading more books and wanting to hang out with friends more. Like they just naturally turn outward toward other things. And it's so easy when you're bored to just be like, oh, well, I'll just watch a show or I'll just play a video game. So having that break just really helps them connect with life without technology, and it helps them remember hobbies and things. It also just kind of helps so they're not so addicted. It's just technology is addictive, and it's very easy to just need it, and your brain just wants it. And when you take that time off, then it resets all of that and helps you so you're not so consumed by technology. I will add for anyone who's considering doing a technology fast that, we have like for us, it's the last week of the month. If there's some big thing that week, like say Christmas break is the last week of the month, then we will either do it the week before or we will do it the week after so that they can, watch movies or stuff over Christmas break. So if you do a technology fast, it's okay to switch it around, but just think through the whole year of what week of the month would make the most sense for your family to try it out and do it. Kids might not be so excited when you first propose it, but once they experience it, they will like it. The first time we did it, my kids asked, we just did it once. We were just going to do it for a week. I think it was probably like a school challenge for a class that one of my kids had. And so we did it. And then the kids said, I loved that. Can we do that every month? I said, of course. And so it just became part of our family culture. We take a week off every month. Okay, the next category I have labeled as safeguards. Things that you should do to help keep your child safe. One thing is the parent, you should know all passwords. You should know every password to your child's device, to any accounts your child has. Like, you should know all the passwords. It's also wise and okay for you to monitor and review your child's text and browsing history. And that is something as your child gets older, you may step back on, may not do as often. But for sure, when your child's first starting out, it's wise that every night you look over that stuff, and it's wise that you check in with your kids later. I will share, when our kids first start texting, for sure, we read their texts every night, and they know that. Like, that's open, they know we do it, and we encourage them to let their friends know we do it too, so that their friends know that when they're texting that we will be reading it. There was a time when one of my daughters had a friend texting her telling her that she was planning to harm herself, and we knew her parents, and so we let her parents know what we had read, and they were able to intervene and get her some help. And she was not happy at the time, but my daughter did tell her, I told you, you knew that my parents read my text messages. And that girl is great today. It can feel intrusive, but you have to remember that these are your young children. These are still children, their brains are still developing. And like I said, as they get older, you may step back from that. But for sure, if you have young children who have access to those things, like young teenagers, I'm talking about teenagers. I'm talking about 13 and up. So if you have children younger than this, absolutely for sure. But even with 13 and older, that you are checking in on those things. Another good smart safeguard is just that all shows require parental approval before you watch them. And that's really important, especially now where we have streaming services where there's so much they can watch without you even knowing. And children, teenagers, don't understand how to discern and how to analyze a show before they start watching it to see, like, is this appropriate? So it's really smart to just say, hey, before you watch a new show, you need to check in with us and make sure that that's okay, that is an okay show, and we'll tell you a yes or no. Another smart safeguard is that all apps require approval, and we actually have it turned on so that no app can be downloaded by any of our children unless we approve it. So it's just a really good idea. That way you can review it and look into it, try it out yourself before you let them use it. So it's just a really good idea to make sure that you have it so that they cannot get an app without your approval. There are ads for apps everywhere. So if you just let them get whatever they want, who knows how many different apps they can have on their phone. Their smart safeguard is rating limitations. So at our house, you absolutely do not get to watch PG-13 until you are 13 years old. So that's just understood. It does get hard when they are about second half of 11, 12. Currently, my youngest child is 11. She'll be 12 this summer as I record this. And she's also the youngest child in our house. And so all of her siblings have the ability to watch shows that are PG-13, and she is not. And so this tween stage, when she is a little more mature than some of these younger shows, but she's just not old enough to watch PG-13 yet. And it is a hard time, and it's okay. It's okay if it's hard for them to have some time waiting to be old enough to watch some of these shows. They will turn 13, they will get to watch them, and they will be okay. So these are things that have been deemed under several rules that this should not be viewed by audiences under the age of 13. And there's a good chance that your standards are different than the standards, they may be higher than standards of what has been set. Another smart safeguard is to limit internet access. So when your teenager first gets a phone, it is wise to not also hand them the internet at the same time. It's good to be careful with internet, make sure that they learn some steps on how to be safe with it before you give them the internet on their phone. And I think it's okay if you decide they don't get the internet on their phone until they move out of the house and are monitoring themselves in that way. So just decide how much internet access you want them to have on their own personal device, and that's a smart safeguard. It's also really smart to have a charging station. You've probably heard this a lot of times before. Where I am now, we have a charging station right there. When this room is an addition that we built, and when we did it, we put a ton of plugs in that exact spot. There's a ton of outlets so that there's plenty of space for things to be plugged in and charged there. So like there's a curfew, things get turned in, and there's a charging station. We also have a charging station in another room in the house. But it's really smart to have a charging station and for parents to check those charging stations to make sure things are turned in at curfew, and that's where they are for the night. It's also important you teach your children to guard their personal data online and on social media. Don't share your full name. Don't share your birthday. Don't share what school you go to, your personal phone number. Don't share your mom's maiden name. Like, think about all of the personal security questions that you know you get asked. Like, make sure your child knows those are not things we share online. And it's also good to have a rule that you may not chat with strangers. That's an important thing to look at with apps and see like what kind of chat availability is there. Even in apps aimed toward young children, there's often chat that is an option that they're able to do. And so it's good to check and see like if you can turn that off, and smart just to say we're not chatting with strangers on the internet. It's also a really good idea to get your child a very simple phone, especially when they first get a phone. Like, just like your child learned to walk slowly, and when they first were walking, they'd fall down, they weren't super steady. When you first give them a phone, it's like they're learning to walk. And so it's really smart to give them something super simple that they can navigate. I mean, everything that children learn and humans learn, it's you start here and you work up to here. And so it's absolutely okay for you to, the first time you get your teenager a phone, to get them a simple phone that is super locked down or super basic. You don't have to hand them everything with all the bells and whistles. Last but not least, for sure not least, is talking about social media rules. A rule I would strongly encourage you to have is that you cannot have social media before the age of 13. There are laws that protect children, protect people who are 13 and older. They don't cover children under 13 because the government has, in the United States at least, has decided that under 13 is not a place children should be. So if you want those laws to protect your children, you have to also be following the rules of not being on social media before the age of 13. So that should be your base. Absolutely nothing before age 13. If you're signing your child up on social media before age 13, then you are telling that app, that company, that your child is older than 13. So you have had to be dishonest in order to sign your child up. And that should be your first sign as a parent that you shouldn't be doing it. If you have to be dishonest about it, you probably shouldn't be doing it. And that does not mean that the 13 comes and you have to let your child start on social media. We do not let our kids have social media accounts until they are sophomores in high school. And by that point, they are 15 and turning 16. And we also limit what social media accounts they can have. So once they are sophomores in high school, they don't just get to get whatever social media they want. I have certain social media accounts, platforms that I do not let my children have. And I don't even have them. These are accounts and platforms that, through my research, I have decided are unsafe enough that even though I am in an industry where you should be on every single platform, I don't have them. And so it just helps. Like, I'm sorry if you want that, but I don't have it. And if it's not safe enough for me, it's not safe enough for you. Important you have a rule with social media that you are allowed to shut it down at any point. As you monitor your child's social media account, if you see there are problems, you have the right to shut it down. You could choose to delete the app off of your child's phone. You can choose to change the password so your child can't get in there. You could even just delete the account altogether. Reality is there can and is a lot of unsafe things that happen on social media, from bullying to sex trafficking to, there's just a myriad of things that are not safe. And there's an account I really love following on Facebook called Officer Gomez, and he is an officer in a school, and he shares things without sharing private information. He shares general social media tips that and also things that happen within the school. Like, these are things that are happening in schools that kids are facing, parents need to be aware of. Every once in a while, he makes a post that says, here is a list of all of the safe social media platforms that your child can use. And he puts nothing on the list. There's nothing that is safe. There's nothing that doesn't have workarounds and loopholes where even if you are monitoring that your child can't find ways to hide things from you. And the reality is the vast majority of teenagers are smarter at technology than you are. And if your particular child isn't like necessarily smarter than you are, they have a friend who is. So unless that is your career and that is what you are in every day, the teenagers are smarter than you are. And so you have to be careful and set up safeguards to keep them safe in a way that allows you to do so. The social media rule is that accounts are private. You don't want your teenagers having their account open for anyone to find, anyone to see. You want their accounts to be private. You want friendships to have to be requested for people to be able to see what they're saying. So make sure that is a rule that you have. It's important that you also discuss what to do if something goes wrong. And you need to be aware of what can go wrong. And that's why I really enjoy like an Officer Gomez account, because there's just things that like you can't even dream up things that can go wrong, and there'll be things you aren't aware of. And so it's good to discuss, some high level baseline, like and you've probably done this with your children before they were teenagers, just with general internet usage and computer usage. But if you do see something that is inappropriate, here's what you do. And make sure you have open dialogue. Make sure that you routinely talk to your child about what they are or are not seeing on social media. Like, hey, have you seen any inappropriate messages on Facebook? I mean, most teenagers do not use Facebook, but have you seen anything come up on Instagram, or are you seeing stuff that has made you uncomfortable? Is anyone doing anything, like saying anything to you that makes you like upset? It's just smart to have those conversations. That needs to be a part of normal dialogue, normal checking in. It should be as normal as, hey, how was your day today? It's also really smart to have some screen time limits on those apps. So just, and like literally set it on the phone, that there are limitations to how much time you can spend on this platform each day. I am sure that all of us know how easy it is to lose track of how much time you are spending. It's just super easy to scroll. It's super easy. It's mindless. Like I myself have screen time limits on these platforms. So my phone lets me know once I've reached that limitation. And I'm like, oh, guess I'm done there today. And I do that even though part of my business is being on those platforms. And so even though like I need to be there for that, but I also have limitations, so I am not there too much. That does it for a really super basic information on technology rules that you should have for your teenagers. This reminds me, I forgot to tell you one thing. It's important to also be aware of certain apps that can circumvent rules you put in place. For example, if your child has an iPhone, I highly recommend you do not allow them to install Google as one of their apps. Just have them use Safari, because through using Google for their internet instead of Safari, then they can get around limitations that you've set up. It allows them to, they could log in to Instagram through Google. There's just a lot of things they can do that I don't even know them all, but I do know that Google is one of those things you don't want to add. So it's just, if you're going to allow your children to have these kind of devices, it's also just important that you accept that part of that responsibility for you then is staying as up to date as you can to try to be aware of all the pitfalls that your children can face, and also recognizing there's no way that you can know all the pitfalls that your children can face. And you need to stay humble about that and make sure that you are doing your best to be aware, and realizing you can't be aware of it all, because that will help you be more mindful, more observant, and careful about your children. There are so many heartbreaking stories from very involved parents with just good kids. It's just can be a hard thing. So don't be afraid of making the rules. Don't be afraid of being the parent. And your children long-term will not mind that you are the parent. I will tell you, I'm filming this in May. Mother's Day was a couple of weeks ago. And on that day, my children each told me something that they like about me as a mom. And one of my teenagers said, I like that you are a mom. I like that you don't try to be a teenager, that you don't try to be a friend. I like that you're my mom, because most of my friends' moms just try to be their friend. And I like that I have a mom. So they have these moments, even if they're not thanking you every day, like, thanks for putting all these hard rules and restrictions on me. And this is my teenager who does not have any social media, where all of her other friends do. Not all of them, but most of her other friends do. And so she's living under some pretty strong rules right now. But even at that age, she can step back in a moment and say, I'm glad that you are being a mom to me. Your children only get they have lots of friend opportunities. They don't have lots of parent opportunities. So it is important that you are the adult, that you are a parent to your child, and you do what you need to do to protect them, even if that means you're not the most popular person in the house at times. So don't be afraid to protect your kids. And that's all. Thanks for watching and have a great day.